I never thought a birthday party could turn into a nightmare. My pregnancy announcement should have been a celebration, but instead, rage filled my husband's eyes. His mother's words poisoned him, twisting love into hatred. Before I could react, he grabbed a steaming pot of soup and hurled it at my pregnant belly. The burning liquid seared my skin, pain ripping through me as I collapsed. Shaking, I crawled toward my phone, desperate to call my best friend. But just as I pressed the button, my husband's next move was even worse, more dangerous, more cruel. Hello, my name is Emma Carter, and I am 28 years old. I live in Maplewood, a quiet suburban town known for its tree-lined streets and close-knit community. I work as a school counselor, helping children navigate their emotions and struggles. I have always been the type of person who puts others before herself. My job fulfills me, and I find purpose in guiding young minds. Good morning, Alex. How are you feeling today? I asked a nervous little boy in my office. I feel better, Miss Carter. Thanks for talking to me yesterday, he replied with a shy smile. Moments like these make everything worth it. Outside of work, my life seemed simple. I had been married for 3 years to Daniel Carter, a man I once believed was my safe place. Daniel was a finance manager at a mid-sized firm. He was smart, composed, and well-spoken. At first, I admired his quiet nature. I thought it made him thoughtful, intellectual. I didn't realize that his silence often meant indifference. Then there was his mother, Laura Carter, a woman obsessed with social standing and wealth. She had never approved of me. You should have married someone more ambitious, she would say to Daniel, making sure I was within earshot. And then there was his sister, Rachel, who had married a wealthy attorney and never let anyone forget it. Our new house is incredible, she would say at family gatherings, conveniently slipping in its price. Daniel, when are you and Emma going to upgrade from that tiny place? Every gathering felt like a test. One I was always failing. But they never knew the battles I was already fighting in silence. For 2 years, Daniel and I had been trying to have a child. After experiencing several painful miscarriages, I finally had a stable pregnancy. Twins. It should have been the happiest moment of my life. But deep down I knew Laura and Rachel wouldn't be happy for me. And worse, I didn't know if Daniel would stand by me when the time came. That night, as I sat across from Daniel at the dinner table, my heart pounded in my chest. He was scrolling through his phone, barely paying attention to me. I placed a hand over my stomach, feeling the tiniest sense of life growing inside me. This was our moment. This was supposed to be a happy moment. Daniel, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He glanced up, his expression unreadable. Yeah, I took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. Twins. For a brief moment, his face remained neutral. Then, slowly, his lips curved into a small smile. Twins, he repeated. I nodded, my eyes filling with tears. Yes. After everything we've been through, it's finally happening. To my relief, he stood up, walked over, and placed a hand on my shoulder. That's great news, Emma, he said softly. I exhaled, my heart swelling with relief. Maybe this time would be different. But then he frowned slightly. Have you thought about how Mom and Rachel will react? The warmth in my chest disappeared. I know they can be difficult, but this is our family, Daniel, I said, forcing a smile. This is our happiness. He sighed and rubbed his temples. Fine. When do you want to tell them? This weekend, I said. At Lily's birthday party. Lily was Rachel's daughter. She was turning 1, and Laura was hosting a grand celebration at her house. Daniel's jaw tightened. You sure that's a good idea? I nodded. We can't keep this a secret forever. If they have a problem with it, that's their issue, not ours. Daniel hesitated, then finally nodded. All right. But don't expect them to be happy. I didn't. I just hoped they wouldn't ruin everything. That weekend, we arrived at Laura's grand house, a 2-story home decorated with pink and gold balloons for Lily's birthday. Guests filled the spacious rooms, chatting and sipping wine. Rachel greeted us with a practiced smile, her daughter in one arm, her designer bracelet sparkling under the chandelier light. Finally, "You're late," she said, her tone laced with disapproval. I forced a smile and handed Lily a neatly wrapped gift. "Happy birthday, sweet girl." Lily reached for it, but before she could take it, Rachel intercepted the box, barely sparing it a glance. "Oh, how cute," she said dismissively. "But I hope it's not one of those cheap wooden toys. Lily prefers something more sophisticated." I clenched my jaw, but said nothing. Inside the dining room, Laura was standing at the head of the table, effortlessly charming her guests. She gave Daniel a warm smile, but barely acknowledged me. Dinner was served: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and Laura's famous creamy soup, which she had been preparing all morning. The rich, milk-based broth filled the room with its warm aroma. Rachel dominated the conversation, boasting about her husband's latest courtroom victory, their upcoming vacation in Europe, and their new luxury car. Daniel sat quietly, as usual. I ate in silence, my nerves growing with each passing second. Finally, as the plates were being cleared, I took a deep breath and stood up. "Actually," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "Daniel and I have an announcement to make." The room fell quiet. I reached for Daniel's hand, but he didn't take it. I hesitated, then forced myself to smile. "We're expecting twins." A cold silence filled the room. Rachel's expression twisted into something ugly. Laura's lips pressed into a thin line. I looked at Daniel for support, but he was staring at his plate. My stomach dropped. "This is unexpected," Laura finally said, her voice cool. "Unexpected," I repeated, confused. "Laura, this is wonderful news." Rachel scoffed. "You just had to do this today, didn't you? Trying to steal Lily's spotlight." My heart pounded. "That's not what this is about." "Of course it is," Laura said, setting down her wine glass. "Rachel's child is barely one, and now you're trying to overshadow her. How typical." I turned to Daniel. "Daniel?" He finally looked up at me, but his eyes were empty. "I told you this was a bad idea," he muttered. Rachel smirked. Laura took another sip of wine. And I realized, in that moment, I was truly alone in this room. I sat back down slowly, my face burning with humiliation. I had expected them to be cold, but not like this. Not outright cruel. Laura leaned back in her chair, watching me with that same disapproving look I had seen too many times before. Rachel shook her head, picking at her salad. "Honestly, Emma, how do you expect to raise children when you can barely manage your own life?" I swallowed the anger rising in my throat. "I don't need your approval." Laura's eyes darkened. "No, but my son does," she said smoothly. "Daniel, are you really okay with this? Do you think this is the life you deserve? Struggling with 2 children while your wife drags you down." I turned to Daniel, desperate for him to stand up for me. Instead, he exhaled slowly and rubbed his temples, as if I was nothing but a burden. "Mom, please not now," he muttered. But that wasn't enough. Laura's lips curled into a smirk. "You still have time to fix this, Daniel," she whispered. "You don't have to be stuck with her mistakes." A sick feeling crawled up my spine. Daniel clenched his jaw. "I don't know what to do anymore." Rachel smirked. "Well, if you need a solution, I can think of one." A wave of dread settled in my stomach. Laura stood up and walked toward the kitchen. "Maybe we all just need a moment to cool down," she said smoothly. But I saw it, the way she glanced at Daniel. A silent message passed between them. Something was very, very wrong. I turned in my seat just as Laura pulled a steaming pot off the stove. The creamy soup she had made earlier, boiling hot, thick with milk and spices, was still bubbling as she carried it toward the dining room. My breath hitched.
"No."
She wouldn't. But before I could react, she handed the pot to Daniel. And he took it. The man I had loved. The man I had married. He took it. And then he looked at me. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. He had chosen them over me. "Daniel," I whispered, shaking my head. His grip tightened around the handle. His knuckles turned white. "This is your fault, Emma," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You just wouldn't stop pushing." I barely had time to move. Then he lifted the pot and threw the boiling soup directly at me. The pain was instant. A burning, searing agony tore through my skin as the scalding liquid splashed over my abdomen, my arms, my thighs. My scream filled the room as I collapsed, my body writhing in pain. I instinctively curled my arms around my stomach, desperate to protect my unborn children, but the damage was already done. Rachel let out a satisfied sigh. Laura looked down at me with nothing but contempt. "You should have known your place," she murmured. Through the blinding pain, I knew I had to move. I had to do something. I had to survive. With every ounce of strength I had left, I reached for my purse. My fingers trembled as I fumbled for my phone, my vision swimming. I couldn't focus. My skin felt like it was melting. I heard Laura say something. Rachel laughed. Daniel just stood there. I pressed a single button. And then I whispered, barely able to speak through the pain. "Help me." On the other end of the line, Lena answered. "Emma?" She must have heard the agony in my voice, because her tone immediately changed. "Emma, what's wrong?" I couldn't respond. The world was fading. But then I heard her yell, "I'm calling the police. Hold on, I'm coming." The last thing I saw before everything went black was Daniel, standing over me, staring.
Pain.
That was all I could feel. Blinding, unbearable pain. My body burned, my skin screaming with every movement. I was barely conscious, my vision blurred, my hearing muffled. The voices around me sounded distant, like echoes through a tunnel. Laura and Rachel were whispering. Daniel stood still. None of them helped me. And then, a sound shattered the silence.
Bang, bang, bang.
A sharp, urgent pounding at the door. Then a voice. "Lena, open this door right now," she shouted, her voice filled with panic and rage. No one moved. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw from screaming.
Bang, bang, bang.
"Emma," Lena's voice was shaking. "I know you're in there." Laura sighed dramatically. "How annoying," she muttered. Rachel rolled her eyes. "Let's just send her away." Daniel still said nothing. But before anyone could react, the front door burst open. Lena stormed inside, her face pale with fury. The moment she saw me, collapsed on the floor, my skin red and blistered, her entire body went rigid. Her wide, horrified eyes locked onto Daniel. Then Laura. Then Rachel. Then, very slowly, she pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police," she said, her voice dangerously calm. Laura laughed. "Oh, sweetheart, you don't understand. This is a family matter. You don't need to." Lena cut her off. "Shut up." For the first time, Laura looked startled. Lena's hands were shaking as she dialed 911. "My best friend has been attacked," she said, her voice filled with fury. "She's pregnant, she's burned, and she needs an ambulance now." Laura tried to speak, but Lena whipped her head toward her.
"You stay right
there." Rachel smirked. "Oh, please, the police won't do anything. This is our house." Sirens. Loud, blaring, getting closer. Rachel's smug expression vanished instantly. Laura stepped back, her confidence finally shaken. Daniel went pale. Then, flashing red and blue lights filled the windows. Within seconds, police officers flooded the house. "Hands where we can see them," one of them ordered. 2 officers rushed to my side, while others moved toward Daniel, Laura, and Rachel. Lena dropped to her knees beside me, gently taking my hand. "Emma, I'm here. You're safe now." I barely managed a whisper. "My babies." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "The ambulance is coming. Just hold on." The officers turned to Daniel. "Sir, we have multiple reports of domestic assault. We need you to step away from your wife." Daniel's lips parted, his eyes darting toward his mother. Laura immediately tried to take control. "Officer, this is a misunderstanding," she said smoothly. "My daughter-in-law had an accident." Lena spun toward her eyes blazing. "And accident?" she screamed. "You and your son threw boiling soup on a pregnant woman." The officer's expression hardened. "Ma'am, We have a victim with severe burns and a witness account that says otherwise. Just then, another voice cut through the room. Excuse me, officer? One of Rachel's dinner guests, a woman I barely knew, stepped forward, holding up her phone. I recorded the whole thing. A deadly silence fell over the room. Rachel's face turned ghostly white. The officer took the phone, played the video, and his jaw tightened. Then he turned to Daniel. Sir, turn around and put your hands behind your back. For the first time, true fear flickered in Daniel's eyes. Wait, no.
Click.
The sound of handcuffs locking into place. Rachel tried to back away, but another officer grabbed her wrists. No, wait. This isn't fair.
Click.
Another set of cuffs. Laura looked like she was about to faint. You can't do this, she shrieked. This is my house. My family.
Click.
The final pair of handcuffs snapped around her wrists. The officer looked at all three of them. You are under arrest for aggravated assault and attempted harm to an unborn child. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. I closed my eyes. It was over. They were finally being taken away. Just then, the paramedics arrived. Lena held my hand the entire time as they lifted me onto the stretcher. I was barely conscious, but I managed to whisper one last thing before the world faded to black. Thank you, Lena. Then everything went dark. I woke up to the rhythmic beeping of machines and the sterile scent of antiseptic. My body felt heavy, my skin throbbing with pain, but I was alive. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly above me. I tried to move, but a sharp sting shot through my abdomen and thighs. Then, a warm, familiar voice. Emma? I turned my head slightly. Lena was sitting beside me, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. You're awake, she whispered, squeezing my hand. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. The babies? Lena smiled through her tears. They're okay. Both of them. The doctors said your clothes absorbed most of the heat. There was no direct harm to them. A sob of relief escaped my throat. Thank God. Just then, a doctor walked in, his expression calm but serious. Mrs. Carter, he said gently, I'm glad to see you awake. I nodded weakly. How bad is it? He checked his chart. You suffered second-degree burns across your abdomen and upper legs. Recovery will take time, but with proper care, you'll heal. I took a shaky breath. And the pregnancy? His features softened. Your babies are strong. We'll continue to monitor them closely, but as of now, they're safe. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I had survived. And so had they. A few hours after I woke up in the hospital, 2 detectives entered my room. Their expressions were calm but serious, their presence signaling the weight of what had happened. Lena remained by my side, her posture protective, her eyes burning with quiet rage. One of the detectives, a woman in a dark suit, pulled out a notepad. Her badge glinted under the hospital's fluorescent lights. Mrs. Carter, she said in a professional but gentle voice, we're sorry for what you've been through. If you're feeling strong enough, we'd like to ask you some questions about the incident. I swallowed, my throat still raw. My body ached from the burns, but I knew I had to do this. I nodded. I can talk. And so I told them everything. The emotional abuse I had endured for years. The way Laura and Rachel had manipulated Daniel against me. The moment my husband, the man who had once vowed to protect me, lifted that pot and threw boiling soup at me. The detective's pen scratched furiously against the paper, but her face remained unreadable. When I finished, there was a brief silence. Then the male detective, a tall man with graying hair, spoke. We've already arrested Daniel Carter, Laura Carter, and Rachel Carter, he informed me. The video evidence is damning, and multiple witnesses, including your friend Lena, have provided statements. The prosecution will have a strong case against them. A lump formed in my throat. What happens now? The detective glanced at his notes. Daniel has been charged with aggravated assault and attempted harm to an unborn child. Laura and Rachel are facing conspiracy charges and accessory to attempted assault. Lena, who had been gripping my hand, squeezed it even tighter. And how long will they be in prison? she asked, her voice sharp. The detective adjusted his glasses. Given the severity of the charges and the clear intent behind the attack, Daniel faces up to 15 years in prison. Laura and Rachel could receive 5 to 8 years each, depending on how the trial unfolds. I felt a shiver run down my spine. 15 years. Would that ever be enough? The detective continued. On top of that, a civil lawsuit has been filed against them. They will be required to pay financial damages to cover your medical expenses and emotional suffering. I exhaled shakily. They were gone. They could never hurt me or my children again. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom, facing the people who had tried to destroy me. The air was thick with tension. The polished wooden benches, the judge's high seat, the rows of spectators, all of it felt surreal. Lena sat beside me, offering silent strength. Across the room, Daniel, Laura, and Rachel sat in the defendant's section, handcuffed and wearing prison uniforms. Daniel wouldn't meet my gaze. Laura, for the first time since I had known her, looked small, her arrogant confidence stripped away. Rachel's face was twisted in defiance, but I could see the fear in her eyes. The state's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Davis, stood and addressed the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just a case of domestic violence. This is a case of calculated cruelty. The defendants, Daniel Carter, Laura Carter, and Rachel Carter, not only planned an attack on a pregnant woman but executed it in a way that could have killed both her and her unborn children. She turned and gestured toward me. This woman, Emma Carter, suffered second-degree burns, emotional trauma, and nearly lost her children. She was not attacked by a stranger. She was attacked by the man who vowed to love and protect her. The jury members stole glances at me, their expressions grim. Ms. Davis then played the video recording captured by a party guest. The entire courtroom watched in horrified silence as Daniel raised the pot of boiling soup and threw it onto me. My scream echoed through the speakers. Even though I had lived it, watching it again made me feel nauseous. A few jury members winced. One woman covered her mouth in shock. Ms. Davis paused the video and turned to the judge. This was not an accident. This was a deliberate act of violence, and it must be punished accordingly. Daniel's lawyer, a stiff-looking man in a gray suit, stood up. Your Honor, my client deeply regrets his actions. He was under the influence of his mother's toxic manipulation and was not in a rational state of mind. He did not intend to cause such harm. I felt rage bubble inside me. Not intend to cause harm? He threw a pot of boiling soup at his pregnant wife. The judge didn't look impressed either. Rachel's lawyer tried a different tactic. Ms. Carter, she said, looking at me, would you say that you and Rachel had a history of sibling rivalry? I frowned. She's not my sister. The lawyer continued, but there were tensions between you two? I set my jaw. If by tensions you mean her treating me like I was beneath her and calling me a gold digger, then yes. Rachel shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The lawyer hesitated. They had nothing. No excuses. No justifications. Because the truth was undeniable. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a guilty verdict. The judge, a stern-faced woman with silver hair, looked directly at the defendants. Daniel Carter, you are sentenced to 15 years in prison for aggravated assault and attempted harm to an unborn child. Laura Carter, you are sentenced to 8 years in prison for conspiracy to commit assault. Rachel Carter, you are sentenced to 5 years in prison for accessory to assault. A heavy silence fell over the room. Daniel slumped in his chair, his face blank. Laura let out a choked gasp, shaking her head in disbelief. Rachel burst into tears. But I felt nothing. No pity. No sadness. Just relief. The next morning, Lena was flipping through some paperwork at my bedside. Emma, she said suddenly, I was going through your legal documents. There's something you never told me. I frowned. What? She placed a folded envelope in my lap. I recognized it immediately. I had kept it hidden for years, never feeling the need to open it. Slowly, I unfolded the paper. It was the deed to my parents' house, a house they had left me when they passed away. a house I had never told anyone about. Lena stared at me. You own property, Emma. A fully paid-off house. Why didn't you ever mention this? I swallowed hard. Because I never needed it before. I wanted to make it on my own. But you need it now, Lena said softly. You don't have to start from nothing. You already have a home. For the first time since the attack, I let out a breath that felt like freedom. I had a place to go. I wasn't trapped. I stood outside the quiet, two-story home that had belonged to my parents. The white shutters were slightly worn from time, the garden overgrown, but it was mine. Lena helped me carry the last of my boxes inside. You okay? She asked. I nodded, looking around. It smelled like old memories and new beginnings.
This is home now, I said.
She smiled. You deserve this, Emma. A week later, a manila envelope arrived at my door. I opened it slowly. Inside were the official divorce papers. Daniel had filed from prison. Good. I picked up a pen and, without hesitation, signed my name. The last string tying me to that life was now cut. I was finally free. Today, I sit on the porch of my home, watching my children, Noah and Lily, playing in the backyard. They are happy, safe, and full of laughter. I still have faint scars on my skin, but I wear them proudly. I started a non-profit organization for domestic violence survivors, helping women escape the cycle of abuse. And as for Lena, she never left my side. Emma, you did it, she said one evening as we sat together, sipping tea. I smiled. No, Lena, we did it. I survived. And I built a better life for myself and my children. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing content. Your support means the world to us. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next one.